unified theory would take all of these things like ghosts and interdimensionals and maybe some extraterrestrials travel that way, or some cryptids, and they all are abiding by the same rules.
Greetings and welcome to the Vortex. I'm your host, Daniel Allen Jones, and I'm very honored to be here with Ben Hansen. Ben, glad to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've had a great time here in Edinburg for the UFO Festival and Conference, which we've just wrapped up. It's been really insightful to hear all the guests and see everyone celebrating something it's quite mysterious, but it's something that people like to get together and learn a little bit more about. You've spent a lot of time exploring many mysterious subjects and anomalous phenomena, from UFOs to spectrology, the paranormal, Bigfoot, cryptozoology, all of these things, which I think I'm personally fascinated in, and I do what I can to contribute some kind of meaningful work and research and do what we can to connect together, talk to witnesses, which you are really involved with, and we like to see what we can glean and what we find insightful from these things. So let's just get right into it. We'll do a little bit of rapid fire. So because we're on the topic of UFOs, what do you find important about what we're dealing with when it comes to the subject of unidentified flying objects, or UAP as we see in the government, maybe how that might relate to alien or extraterrestrial life, and this whole idea of disclosure? Where do you sit with how we're dealing with this right now?
You mean like in general, the public dealing with it?
Well, yeah, let's say, for instance, we see a lot of these things trying to be taken as a way that could be meaningful for people that have been talking about this for years, saying, I told you so. These things have existed for decades, maybe centuries or more, because the government is now saying that we've acknowledged the existence of the UFO phenomenon. And maybe people say, well, that means that alien life must exist, and that maybe that we could see the government coming out eventually to acknowledge something or make that declaration. In your position, do you see that we're heading in that direction, or do you think that people will be vindicated for all their experiences when it comes to UFOs?
Yeah, we're definitely, I think, taking some positive steps. I would say, if I thought about it a lot, there's probably stages of this where, it's like anything that is really strange, people are first ridiculed, and then they start to consider it a little bit. There's curiosity, and then there's acceptance, and then there's finally, I'd say the final stage would be, well, maybe acceptance comes sort of in between that and after it, but you have to have some social pressure. Like, if we're talking about change, in this case, the truth isn't just going to come out organically. I think you're going to have to force the issue. And so you've got to have enough momentum behind it to cause the change. And so I'd say we're probably somewhere in between. We're getting past the ridicule stage. I mean, you can't just laugh these things off,
right?
The Navy videos and all that. But most people are probably in the curiosity phase at the moment. Media is very curious. It's a hot topic. Politicians were afraid to even run on a platform of UFOs before. But now you see people like, as they're leaving, Harry Reid, or that are openly campaigning on it, Hillary Clinton,
right?
Openly saying this is what I want to do with it. And then even Marco Rubio, like senators who are still there, who are willing to go out on a limb and say, look, I don't think this is going to affect my reelection. I'm willing to talk about it, make it an issue. So it's going from curiosity. We're starting to see people now becoming, I don't know if you want to say activists, but the general public is still kind of stuck in the curiosity. I don't think it affects their daily life enough for them to demand the attention. Here at the conferences, you and I and the speakers and everybody else, they're like, let's go march on Washington. Let's go, let's go get them to, tell us the truth because we deserve it. It's going to take many, many more people, I think, to reach that critical mass, though, that the government even really cares.
Right. Well, I think there's going to be a great deal of reassurance with some of the media work that's being done with those figures and people such as yourself who are making those efforts to kind of get that out there. And we'll touch upon that here in a moment, but I'd like to kind of switch gears to, let's say, the paranormal. That's such a broad term in general, but when we look at it, let's say we're studying spectrology, or the idea that maybe ghosts, spirits, strange types of parapsychological things going on. what is your position on this? Do you feel like through the investigations you've done through UFOs and maybe other things, do you use a similar approach into that field as well? Do you think that there's something to that and what people are experiencing?
Absolutely. Like I believe more in that stuff now than I did as a kid. It's funny because I didn't believe in ghosts. I believed that there were spirits that, you know, died, but not like that they'd haunt a place. So now as an adult, I look at these things and, you know, someone tells me a story about, you know, little trolls or gnomes or elementals, they call them. And I'm like, find myself having an open mind just because there's been so many credible people telling stories. And I'm like, it seems ridiculous. But yeah, we do use a lot of the same similar investigation techniques. We call it crossover technology. We're borrowing from ghost hunting, using some of those things because many people believe there is some sort of unified theory, that there's something with all of this that ties it together.
Right, and I'd like to hit on that in a moment because I'm actually really fascinated in those things as well, and how that might be, there could be a connection between some of these things. And continuing on, it's interesting to see the breadth of and scope of work that you've been involved with. Let's jump into some cryptozoological studies, Bigfoot, strange creatures, unusual animals. How are these things in the scope of the paranormal and UFOs? Those are some really interesting arenas already. Where do those sit with the work that you've done? Do you think that there could be something to the sightings that people allegedly have of creatures like Bigfoot or other mystery animals?
I do, and it's funny because I investigate a lot of this stuff, but when you talk to the Bigfoot investigators, they're split. The camp is completely split right now. You literally will have separate conferences where they think it's an undiscovered ape, North American ape, and they do not allow anyone else to come and talk about interdimensional beings. Then you have the other, and they make fun of them, they call them the woo-woo.
Yeah.
Right? And so the woo-woo crowd, I'm in the middle where I'm like, I do think there's a living, breathing, physical creature probably. There's just so many really good stories of people that I trust that have seen these things face to face. But we haven't ever found a dead body.
Right.
It's different when we talk about extraterrestrials who, you know, maybe come here in a craft or travel from place to place. But if these things are living here in a specific forest, or in some cases on an island, where are they going?
Yeah.
Right. And I think at some point you have to be open to the possibility of interdimensional, because we do have a lot of accounts where, for example, you'll find a UFO landing, you'll find evidence of the landing, and you'll have Bigfoot sightings there and tracks going right up to the circle and it disappears. I don't know, you know, or accounts of people seeing creatures that are accompanying, you know, the occupants. So I think you have to be open-minded. The best place to test this are places like Skinwalker Ranch, some of these other ranches that we're looking into, because there's something about the geology, whatever it is, that strange as it is, like people say, you know, portals, they've witnessed things kind of opening up and things coming through. I don't know. But if it's there one day and it's not the next, you know, is it really just an undiscovered creature?
Right. I think there's a lot to it. That's a subject I'm really fascinated with. I've looked in quite a bit. And like you said, there is a great division in how people interpret what is being experienced. And if the witnesses are recounting as what they, you know, describe happened, then we can only go with the facts. We can only go with what they witnessed and what we can do to kind of go back, retrace steps, find information or material that corroborates it or can be tangible to still go and investigate. Because without that, it's really just something we have to kind of go based upon if you believe this person or you find that they're credible. And there's a lot to that. And so as we kind of move along, there's a lot of many mystery areas that we could get into. What are your thoughts on some of these anomalous archaeological sites? Do you think that there's some things out there that show us that history is probably different than what we're told in textbooks and throughout school? A lot of these things kind of make us wonder, maybe, you know, the ancient astronaut theory could be involved with this, or maybe there's something else. Do you think that there's any credence to some of these strange archaeological sites around the world?
Well, I will say a lot of this idea, I think, comes from the TV show Ancient Aliens, right? We have friends who appear on that. I know the producers, and I can say that they probably never expected that show to go more than one season.
Yeah.
But when you take a theory that's a good one and you expand it and you really stretch and you really try to look for evidence of that in every little encounter, every religious account, and you try to put aliens into it, it does get a bit out there. But I think we would be surprised that we underestimate the technology that was available or that was developed, you know, in ancient civilizations. And so I don't necessarily think that Stonehenge was, you know, boulders brought by aliens or the pyramids were made by aliens, but they may have had more knowledge of visitors, you know, and those that were coming to them. And so if we do look back and we, you know, look at the drawings on the walls and stuff, it's very probable they were having some of the same encounters that we are now.
Yeah.
You know, hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. And so whoever they are could have been visiting, intervening. I'm not going to go say that they've inserted their DNA and changed us and that we're from them now. It's wild imaginative speculation.
Right.
But why put a limit on, you know, like discussing it?
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's good to entertain these possibilities because that's how we can make progress through scientific developments and new discoveries. I do seem to lean more towards the notion that technology, as we understand it and how we, like you said, developed it, is greatly misunderstood with what was capable in ancient times. And our ancestors, the people who were involved with all of these things, had a vast knowledge, and somehow we've lost track of a lot of that. So kind of continuing on, you mentioned how shows like that seem to really push certain concepts in a way that, you know, you might cover lots of different areas, but then you kind of have to go back to, was it aliens? So, you know, that's one thing. It does touch a lot of people in a way that plants the seed in their mind. What are your thoughts on how shows on network television and just on the internet, all the social media, how this is really helping to generate interest and get people involved in a way that actually kind of allows them to feel like they're not just an enthusiast, but maybe can do something more meaningful about how they understand what's going on when we're exploring these mysteries. You've been a lot involved in a lot of these shows and different media appearances yourself. So do you advocate that this is something that can help elevate like the general standard of the public, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the media, entertainment, Hollywood has really been a tremendous force in causing these things to be widely accepted or curiosity. Two examples, unsolved mysteries, like in the late 80s and in the 90s. Because of that, honestly, that show, you know, talking about Roswell and the breaking story there, it made a lot of people feel like it was finally time, who are holding on to these secrets, you know, military members, like, I can talk about it. They're talking about it on TV. It's not so crazy, and maybe I'm not going to be threatened or killed anymore like I thought. So they started coming out, right? And so that helped the UFO, you know, world and people talking about what they're seeing. And then also you have ghost hunters. Now, before ghost hunters came along, there was this really big stigma on, what are you guys doing? Like seances and, you know, is this devil worshiping and you're calling out ghosts? And like, oh no, they're actually trying to use equipment. And it removed a lot of that stigma, right? And so then you have these kind of like pseudo-citizen, you know, clubs, not scientists per se, but they're trying to apply principles. It's making it more wide mainstream, and the clubs just sprouted. People like that can come out of their paranormal closet,
right?
You know, and so I do think it's really helped with the discussion. A lot of these shows, and people have to remember though, first and foremost, they are for entertainment. If they weren't entertaining, no one would watch them. So they do have to dramatize some things. You know, a lot of shows kind of just take it a bit too far, but the idea of the concepts, the shows I've always tried to be involved in, take a more documentary approach, try to be more objective, and it's a balance that you just have to work out.
Right. You want to have some integrity with it. You don't want it to all just be made into a mockery. And I think a lot of people, they see some shows and think they're just completely making a joke out of this subject, or something that
Yeah.
they think none of these shows matter or exist, or they don't really add any credibility. And I think that really they probably do a better job sometimes touching the masses of people, rather than the UFO conferences, where you're going to get people who are specifically interested and already willing to kind of be open to those things. So that's really important, I think, to help understand that the only way to really generate a larger awareness across the general public and in our society is to kind of tap into that in a way that, like you said, it's entertainment. Some people say infotainment, because you want to bring in both.
I want to educate people, but if I sat down and just told them, my opinions and beliefs and evidence, you wouldn't get a fraction of the people tuning in.
Right.
But if you do it in a fun way and make them want to watch first and really get the emotion of what these witnesses were feeling or seeing or doing, and all that, then once they're hooked, like, okay, now you want to learn something about this,
Yeah.
So,
well, in closing, what has been the biggest takeaway you've come to understand when looking through all of these strange, mysterious subjects, studying the unexplained phenomena from all over the world and beyond? It seems like there's so much that we can learn, we can start to understand, and so much that we may never be able to know. What have you found why you would say it might be important that we continue to look into these mysteries and we continue to do this investigative work?
It kind of depends on I guess what phenomenon you're talking about. For me, with ghosts, I don't think anything's going to really change. It's not like it's a necessity that we know this, but it's the curiosity of the question many people have: is there life after death? Right. And because that's such the big question, some people only seek through things such as ghost hunting to find that answer. Now, I personally am very religious. I don't need ghost hunting to tell me that. But if you try to figure out the science, which I think it is based on, you can answer that question perhaps one day. The other part of it is with UFOs. I think we're talking about a national security problem, right? And we're talking about the very core issue of, can we trust our government? If they haven't been telling us the truth for 70 plus years or more,
right,
that's important, right? It's important that we know if these craft are our adversaries. What capabilities do they have? And if it's not theirs, well, okay, who are they and what are their motives? So it's hugely important. But until it's at your doorstep, most people are just going to be like, I got to go to work the next day. I got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
It's like, I say this about my wife all the time. I love her. She's interested, but she represents a typical citizen, American, worldwide citizen, whatever. She'll watch a show occasionally, and then she goes about her day and she doesn't think about it anymore. Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of in that same boat where you can enjoy a lot of the content that's out there, a lot of the information and material that can help to develop these different ideas, thoughts, and we entertain theories and possibilities that kind of also get into what's going on with these different subjects, UFOs, ghosts, any of these things, in a way that help to circulate and to make aware the issues in a community, like we're doing here. We have these events where you can get together, gather, talk about it, and kind of bring it to the forefront. I think it's a big deal. And you mentioned something earlier about the unified aspect of this. Do you think that there's something to that? How these different areas of interest could be unified, or if there's some kind of binding force?
I think the people do the same thing with religion, and they say, well, religion is it's completely separate and it can't coexist with science, which is absolutely false. I think that religion operates within the rules of science as well. It's just we don't know all the rules yet.
Yeah.
Right? And so a unified theory would take all of these things like ghosts and interdimensionals and maybe some extraterrestrials travel that way, or some cryptids, and they all are abiding by the same rules. So yeah, I think there is. I don't necessarily think they're all in the same dimension, or if you want to call it that.
Sure, yeah.
But there's got to be a lot of commonalities there.
Awesome. Well, it's important that we continue to do this work so that we can bring more awareness to these many subjects, actually. And I think that what you're doing is an important part of that. You're providing people with reassurance that not only are they not crazy, you're connecting with witnesses, bringing them to a place where they have a platform to feel secure and comfortable opening up about this, and that can be provided for people through all the shows that you're on as well, and the work that you do. We like to say here that there's so much that is waiting to be discovered. So many new things out there, and maybe things that have been here forever that we're just now getting to the point to kind of understand. So we won't know if we don't go, and you've done just that. So Ben, I want to thank you for your time here.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been incredible.
Thanks for work here at the festival.
It's awesome. And we'll see you in the Vortex.
If you liked this video, be sure to check out our other content and get connected on our page and social media sites. Every day, new discoveries are being made all across the world and beyond, so let's work together to find out what's next. And remember, we won't know if we don't go. I'll see you in the Vortex.